welcome to Beyond the Shelf. My name is Dawn.
And I'm Jenny.
And of course, we're excited as usual, but this time extra excited because we're going to talk about science fiction today.
It is a genre that I am not all that familiar with. I'm going to let Dawn steer this spaceship, so to speak, because I have read some. I've watched some movies, of course, but it's just not one that I gravitate towards.
Gravitate. Oh, yeah. Nice. I could probably really geek out and just go on about it. So consider this like the very nerdy episode of Beyond the Shelf for us. So sci-fi, I've done a lot of reading and research leading up to this because I wanted to know some more of the history of this genre. It's kind of interesting because depending on who you ask, there's different definitions. And so what could fit under sci-fi varies. Some people say that sci-fi fits under the umbrella of speculative fiction, while other people and authors will argue speculative fiction is one thing and sci-fi is another and fantasy is another. But some people are they're kind of all the same thing and you can just cram them all into the same category.
Well, where do you fall in that?
I think to give it a Doctor Who reference, it's a little wibbly wobbly.
Okay.
I think there's some crossover that can happen because you can have fantasy in your sci-fi and you can have one person, I forget where I read this, thought speculative fiction more focused on how humans reacted and interacted with the technology, whereas sci-fi was more about technology.
That's a pretty fine line, in my opinion.
Yeah, it can be. And then I was talking with Nicholas the other day, our outreach coordinator, and he felt like there's real science sci-fi. So Isaac Asimov or Christopher Paolini had a book that came out a couple of years ago called To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. And he actually did years worth of research for the science behind all kinds of stuff that happens in that book. But then there's also nerdy sci-fi and that's where Star Trek and Star Wars and things like that come in. And I'm that's a line I could go with because there's definitely some sci-fi that you read that's very technical versus and then their guns went pew pew or whatever. So, whatever your definition of sci-fi is, I think it's going to be kind of wibbly wobbly for us as well as we talk about it today. But most people agree sci-fi started with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Which is one I have read.
Yeah, Frankenstein. There's a really great manga classic and some graphic novel versions of Frankenstein as well. So that's often considered the first sci-fi because you got creating that monster using science and all of that. But I read another thing where somebody argued that the first sci-fi story novella is from 1752 and was written by Voltaire.
Wow.
With Voltaire, we think of other philosophy things when you hear that name and not science fiction. But he wrote this story about this giant alien who comes to Earth. And this giant is 145,000 feet tall and doesn't think that Earth is inhabited because we're the size of
his toenail.
Yeah, I'm tinier than even, yeah. But even older than that, if you can believe, from the 2nd century, there's this writer who was known for his satire and sarcasm called Lucian, and he wrote this story called A True Story. But he starts out the whole thing by saying, none of this is true. And then he talks about space travel and aliens and a bunch of goofy things. But he was known for being really sarcastic. And so the only accounts of Lucian's life, they're we don't know if any of this actually happened because we know he was a satirist. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that was really funny. What sci-fi are you into since you feel or what have you read since you feel you haven't?
Books wise, so some of the ones I've read, I would say are probably more some along the lines of the classic ones like Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury. I mean, I don't think you can dispute his contribution to sci-fi. H.G. Wells, I've read Time Machine and War of the Worlds. A more recent author, Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian. All right, so I picked that book up. I'm I'm going to hate this. And I absolutely loved it. It was so good. And he's written a second one called Project Hail Mary. Haven't read that yet, but I do want to. And then I did watch the movie The Martian. Matt Damon stars in it. And I liked the movie too. And I was really pleasantly surprised by that. And then one I would say that I read when I was a kid would be A Wrinkle in Time.
Yes.
Madeline L'Engle.
Mm-hmm.
That would be probably one of my first introductions to sci-fi as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so there's some of the ones I've read.
I love the story of A Wrinkle in Time. There's actually a graphic novel version of that too, which is cool. But I think the way that she does sci-fi and space travel in that is really cool because it's not like spaceships and like faster than light or anything.
She has a lot of fantasy drawn in as well, obviously.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, and one more, because we didn't mention Ernest Cline when we did Ohio Authors. He wrote Ready Player One, which takes place in like Akron and Columbus and, places around Ohio, which I really liked the book. And I think the reason I liked it was because it has so many throwbacks to the 80s, which was so much fun for me because that's when I grew up. But yeah, I really liked Ready Player One. The second one I didn't like as much, Ready Player Two, but I did like Ready Player One a lot.
I have not read a bunch of those. Some of my favorite sci-fi books that I've read, I am a big C.S. Lewis fan, and I like Narnia, which is fantasy, but doesn't have any sci-fi in it, really. I didn't know that C.S. Lewis had written a space trilogy. And so there's 3 books, hence trilogy. The first one is called Out of the Silent Planet, and it's interesting because, like, I think it's set in, like, the 50s, and our main character travels to Mars, I think it is. Every other planet that is inhabited thinks that Earth is silent because we're like so inwardly focused on ourselves that we haven't tried to communicate outside of our planet. And C.S. Lewis, just being a great author like he was, is very descriptive in how he ends up like flying to this other planet and what things look like there. So it's Out of the Silent Planet. The second one is called Puralandra, which the main character goes to like Venus. The last one is called That Hideous Strength, and it's a little bit weird because it's more like this like ominous, possibly alien presence that's like taking over the earth, and it's strange.
Have you started that trilogy?
No, I've read it. Yeah,
you did read the whole trilogy. Okay. All
yeah.
right.
It's been a little while, but I have read that. One YA sci-fi that I read recently is called Alone Out Here. It's by Riley Redgate. That was interesting because it's kind of Lord of the Flies in space. I personally hated reading Lord of the Flies sophomore year of high school. Did not like that story at all. But I really liked this version of it. It's a group of kids who end up on this ship that was built for people to live on because they think that like the earth is going to be destroyed by the Yellowstone volcano eruption, and how these kids try to build a society because they're all the kids of like the president and prime ministers and stuff like that. And I thought it was really, really well done. There's like just enough technology stuff to it, but a lot of it is about like the dynamics between them, the way that Lord of the Flies is.
Yeah, sometimes I get concerned when I go to read a sci-fi that it's going to just be like so much tech stuff that I'm going to get bored. But if it's well written, like The Martian was, it did get into a lot of tech stuff, but he just wrote it so well. And it was so interesting that it just really grabbed a hold of me and kept my attention. And I didn't know that it would, especially since it's mostly just one character, you know?
Right. You're like, what can happen when it's one guy and he's stuck there by himself?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. But, and then I was thinking too, did you read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
I just looked down at my notes and saw that. I love Hitchhikers.
Do
the
you?
whole series, yes.
I read the first one. I didn't love it. I'm sorry. It's by Douglas Adams, in case somebody... I didn't hate it. I probably won't continue with the series, but, I was like, oh, yeah, what was the meaning of life again?
42.
42, yeah.
Yep. The meaning of life, the universe, and everything.
Yep.
42. I just love the humor in that.
Have you seen the movie? And that's is Zooey Deschanel in that?
She is, yeah.
Okay,
and Martin Freeman plays Arthur Dent, the main character. So, since we mentioned the movie Hitchhiker's Guide, other sci-fi movies, obviously Star Wars.
Obviously Star Wars, yeah. I mean, and I don't want our podcast to only ever be me talking about Star Wars. So yes, everybody knows I like Star Wars 4, 5, and 6. So yeah. We did get to interview some guys from, is it the 501? They are cosplayers.
They dress up as characters from a galaxy far, far away.
They came to our library, and I got to interview them.
All right, so we are here with some members of the Ohio Garrison of the 501st Legion, and we're excited to talk to them. Jenny, being the Star Wars fan between the two of us, is gonna chat with these guys. We hope you enjoy.
And we won't hold it against you that you're a Trekkie, Dawn. That's okay. So thanks, guys, for being here. We do appreciate it. We just have a few questions for you. Thanks for being part of our podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
So just tell us how you got started with all of it.
Well, it was a long time coming for me. I'm 49 right now, and I joined in 2017. It was my New Year's resolution to join the 501st and the Rebel Legion. The Rebel Legion is the good guys. The 501st is the bad guys. So my first character was the Jedi that I'm wearing now. And it was basically my friend's Halloween costume. He gave it to me free of charge. So I'm a permanent loan. He doesn't need it back. His wife doesn't want him to have it back. So it's mine for free. So
Great. So who's kind of in charge of your group?
I was the event coordinator, so I got us the gig. Richard was the event coordinator in the previous years.
Hi, I was the event coordinator in past years.
Great. Thanks, Richard, for being here. So we have 3 total here, so we just want to know how you all got involved in this.
Well, I've been a lifelong Star Wars fan
Okay.
since, I saw the first film in 1977. About 2003, I was looking at the internet, and I saw this picture of a guy in a stormtrooper costume playing piano. And I said, I think I can do something like that. So about 2004, I finally got a stormtrooper outfit, and I realized that it pinched in all the wrong places. I wanted something a lot more comfortable, so I got my biker scout instead.
Okay. So did you have to get a piano as well? I mean, since you...
No, I don't play piano. I just
Oh, okay.
It was just a picture that sparked it.
it was a picture that sparked my interest in it.
Okay.
So, but I've been doing it ever since, so about 18 years now.
Okay, so I have a specific stormtrooper question. So are their sights off, or why can't they hit anything? It's just something I've always wondered.
It's all in the script.
Oh, okay. So it's not the actors
No.
being bad shots. Okay. All right.
In the original story, I think they were letting them escape, so thus they were missing them a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Very good. So have you read the books as well, any of you? Or?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So you're well versed in the galaxy far, far away, then I take it. Okay.
Yeah, books, comics, the TV shows, the old and the new TV shows, even the
Awesome.
horrible Ewok shows from like the post-Return of the Jedi era, the dark times as we like to call it.
Well, should we mention the Christmas episode?
I have on purpose never seen the Christmas episode, and I'd like to keep it that way.
That gives us the Wookiee Life Day, and that's an important day.
So I also remember going to see Star Wars. I was 7 when it came out, and I remember everybody just gasping at the end and just clapping their hands and people used to clap their hands after the end of movies, and it was just pretty awesome.
It's been a while since I saw a movie where people clapped at the end.
I agree. It has
I
been.
think they did in the Avengers Endgame was the last time I saw.
I bet you they did, and they probably were all crying too. At least I was. All right. So do you all dress up as the same characters every time, or do you have different characters that you dress up at, and who is your favorite one to dress up like?
I have several costumes. My first one was a Stormtrooper, and I had the same pinching problem, so I switched over to the TIE Fighter, which is a nice jumpsuit. And this one's very versatile because you can change out the helmet pretty much and get the Imperial Gunner, Imperial crew member. You can get like 6 or 7 costumes with this one jumpsuit because in Hollywood, they recycled a lot of the costumes throughout the sets. And so along with that, I also have a Tusken Raider and I'm starting to build, I'm almost done with a Darth Vader. So maybe next year when you guys have this event, we'll have a Darth Vader.
Oh, awesome. So I do have another question. The question's always asked is who shot first? Do you guys have a theory or?
Han shot first.
That's what I think
Yeah.
too.
Confidence.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
It's his character.
Yeah. All right. And then, so since we are in our library, we do ask everybody that we interview, what are you reading currently, or is there anything on your bookshelf that you're wanting to get into?
I'm rereading a Harry Dresden book, Grave Peril. It's like the book number 3 in that saga. But I do have a book that my friend wrote, and I just picked it up at a con a couple of weeks ago. It's Of Crown and Thorns by Chelsea Banning. And I've not started that yet, but I'm a friend of hers, so I'm going to give her my full support on that.
So I just got done reading the Nelson DeMille, The Maze, and I just started The Myth Adventures by Robert Asprin. It's a whole series, and I'm on Mything Person right now.
I remember the name of the book that I'm currently reading now. It's called Bedpan Commando, and it's about a nurse from World War II.
Okay. So historical fiction.
Well, that's not fiction. It's a true story. It's
Oh,
a biography.
even better.
Autobiography in this case. It's
Okay.
June Lansbury, I believe her name was.
Okay.
So it's a very good story and comes from a more like a diary type writing, but it's very interesting.
So if any of our vast amount of listeners would like to know how to get a hold of you for an event, how do they go about doing that?
The first thing they can do is just go to the 501st website, 501st.com, and in the upper right corner is a request an appearance. And you can just click there, type in your information, and send it off.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you feel like you need to share with us?
May the Force be with you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can I tell my Star Wars joke that I heard recently?
I would be disappointed if you did not.
Okay, all right. I thought it was funny, and my husband groaned, so it's got to be great. So we know, like, there's sort of shortenings and nicknames in Star Wars. So, like, we say R2 instead of R2-D2 and 3PO instead of C-3PO because that's such a great shortening. But do you know what Luke is short for?
He's short for a stormtrooper.
Yeah.
Yeah. If only we had a rim shot, right?
Well, I don't want to break it. Thank you. So yeah, you're a big Star Wars fan, and we know that. And I'm a big Star Trek fan.
Right.
I was actually just watching Picard last night.
When I was growing up, we watched the original Battlestar Galactica. That was like, 70s, 80s, whatever. And then we also watched a TV show called Buck Rogers in the 20th century. And I remember watching that one. And then Looney Tunes, I think it was Daffy Duck did like a spoof on it. And he was Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century or something. So I remember that from when I was a kid. And then, of course, there was, I can't remember his name now. The Martian, the cartoon Martian. He was green. He was a Looney Tunes Martian.
Oh, yeah. Marvin the Martian.
That seemed, was that really? Okay.
I'm
that
pretty
seemed
sure.
so on the nose. I didn't think that was it.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. One of my big favorite ones I remember watching as a kid, and then I rewatched it as an adult, is X-Files. Did you ever watch X-Files?
I did watch some. I'm trying to think of when that came out. Did that come out in like the 90s?
Probably.
Yeah, I think I was having kids, and so in the 90s were just a big blur to me. I was having children, and I don't remember TV, movies, or music from that time. I just remember being in survival mode.
I remember watching X-Files as a kid. I did not catch the overarching plot of it. I just thought it was, alien story of the week kind of thing.
Sure.
But then watching it again as an adult, and you actually pay attention and learn and see the whole why Fox is this way, and appreciating Dana Scully more. And actually went after X-Files aired, a lot more women went into the science field because of watching that show, which I think is just awesome.
One thing I always find interesting, if you go back and you watch shows that had some longevity to them, they almost always have some sort of alien abduction. It just seems like there's always one episode that's going to have somebody that was abducted by aliens and probed and, and researched and everything. And I think that's funny that's just something that we as a society kind of gravitate towards because it's in almost every television program. I think Happy Days back in the day, that's Mork was an alien,
right?
And he started on Happy Days, and
then they branched off into that,
and he had
Mork
and then
Mindy.
Had his own show.
Yeah, we could go on about Firefly together, I think, as well,
sure,
if we wanted to do that. And that's a show that it was not given justice in any way, in my opinion.
It needed more time.
No, but space westerns, I think that one is such a neat thing with the sci-fi genre, because it's sci-fi in that it's in the future, you have space travel, but it also is very kind of like grungy, still like Earth things happening, but then there are different places where there's like all of the technology too.
Yeah, I think I just thought that was really cool when we found out that we both liked that, because it has a huge fandom base, but not like a huge fandom base compared to like a Friends, you know, that is going to stand the test of time forever. And there was also, well, Doctor Who. I never really watched Doctor Who, but you're a big fan of Doctor Who,
I
correct?
am. I watched some of the original stuff, but I didn't start watching Doctor Who until the new Doctors, the 9th, 10th, etc.
Okay, yeah.
But Doctor Who is one of my favorite sci-fi series because of, I feel like they build the characters really well and like you connect to them really well, but there's some goofy episodes, but you also get like some kind of philosophical questions posed and sort of answered in interesting ways with Doctor Who. It's a ride.
Yeah. Yeah, I've only ever watched like just a couple of episodes of Doctor Who. I watched was it the Weeping Angels one? It was probably not the best one to start with because I absolutely hated it. Sorry.
That one's a weird one. I think
Yeah.
most Doctor Who fans will tell you that one's kind of a
It
weird
wasn't the
one.
best one to start
Yeah,
with.
no.
And then I think I watched a couple of Matt Smith ones. So
A lot of people like Matt Smith, but he was the youngest actor to play the Doctor, so he drew in like a much younger audience than some of the other
that's why he
folks.
drew me in, because I'm so young.
Exactly. Now, I didn't even think about this until earlier today, but Jurassic Park is actually sci-fi. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, obviously, if they reincarnated or whatever dinosaurs.
Yeah, they use technology to do it, right? Because life finds a way.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And my understanding is that Michael Crichton, who wrote Jurassic Park, actually had a lot of input on the creation of the movie. So there's the part where Jeff Goldblum's character gives this speech about chaos, and apparently that's like almost line for line from the book.
I read Jurassic Park, but it's been probably well over 20 years ago that I read it. But I was a big fan of the movie, the original one especially. It was just so, I just thought it was so well done, and everything. It made you feel like it was real, like the dinosaurs were real and that could happen. And I think it came out in like 92. I think Ashley was 2, and I let her watch it. I was one of those moms. Didn't seem to scare her, but
That's funny because I have some friends that I can recall being told that they couldn't watch Jurassic Park when they were kids because it was too scary.
they were
but,
better
like,
parents than me.
I watched it as a kid and I turned out just fine, I'm sure. Okay, I've talked about The Fifth Element before.
Sure.
Big
Bruce
fan
Willis.
of the Bruce Willis, Mila Jovovich. Big fan of The Fifth Element. I think I just watched it like the other day because it's like a comfort movie for me, which like it's like goofy and like I know the plot and I could probably quote the whole thing.
Well, I think one of the first sci-fi movies I would remember seeing outside of like Star Wars would have been like Close Encounters of the Third Kind with Richard Dreyfuss. I believe that's a Spielberg. Is
I
that
think so,
Spielberg
yeah.
or Lucas? Yeah, I think it's Spielberg.
I think it's Spielberg.
I remember watching that one as a kid, but I think that we would be doing a disservice to sci-fi if we didn't mention E.T.
Yeah.
You know, that is the epitome of science fiction in my opinion. And that came out in like 81, I think. I remember seeing that at the theater, and it was so good. And I'm sure if we would look at the CGI compared now to what it was then, you know, obviously, but for what it was at the time, it was really good. It was a great story too.
I was definitely too young to pick up on the story when I was a
Okay.
kid. And I, like, even right now, I'm like, there's an alien. He wants to phone home. The kids ride a bicycle in the sky.
And
That's what I
there's
know.
Reese's Pieces.
And Drew Barrymore. I know
Yeah.
that part.
Yeah.
But, like, that was one, I feel like I owe E.T. a rewatch as an
Yes,
adult because,
definitely.
like, as a kid, it was not interesting enough for me
Okay.
when it came out. Have you seen Galaxy Quest?
Oh, what is his name? Tim Allen?
Yes.
And Kirstie Alley?
And Alan Rickman and yeah.
No.
No. Ah!
I know who's in it. I don't think I've seen it, or if I did, it was a long, long time ago. I feel like that might be one my husband likes. I'm pretty sure my daughter Ashley's watched Galaxy Quest and really liked it.
Galaxy.
I love Alan Rickman.
Yeah. That one is so fun, especially as a fan of Star Trek, because it's very much like a Lost in Space Star Trek kind of
yeah.
thing, but then they kind of parody it a little bit, and I think it's great. It's funny. There's a couple of things that are kind of catch you emotionally. And yeah, it's
Well,
really fun.
Lost in Space had a reboot. And have you seen the new one? And it was on Netflix.
I think I saw like the first season of it, but it
Yeah.
didn't really
We watched
catch me.
the first season at least. I kind of liked it. It wasn't too bad. Oh, and if talk about spoofs, have you seen Spaceballs?
I've not.
Okay, yeah. I didn't love it. I like John Candy, who's in it. He would play what would have been like the Chewbacca character.
Yeah, except for he's like a dog, right?
Yeah, it's Mel, what's his name?
Brooks.
Mel
Or no?
Brooks. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And he's a kind of a wacky guy. So, yeah.
What do you think of Planet of the Apes?
I'm not a fan. My husband loved them.
That's another one of those like classic costuming things that you get. This is obviously like a person in a
Oh,
but
yeah.
I feel like for the time though, like the makeup they did on the face to make those people look like apes was really probably pretty advanced.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, like when you watch like a black and white film and you watch, I think that the advancements have been really cool, but I think that back in the day, before they had all the CGI and all the special effects, people really had to know how to act. They had to sell it. They had to really sell that guy that is so obvious, the seaweed coming off of them is just, ridiculous. They had to sell that they were really scared.
Yeah, I feel like there's almost something like for us now, there's a nostalgia attached to like the old cheesy costumes and like the way that they made things look scary or like they were advanced technology or whatever, like the way that they did that. There's almost like a respectability to it. Like the original series of Star Trek, these people had to sit down at this counter that had different colored squares and say these like made up technical phrases and make it sound like it was real and like this is the future.
Yeah. We went to the Comic-Con. Worcester had a Comic-Con. Me and a couple of my kids went, and it was my first Comic-Con I've ever been to, and it was so much fun. And they had the original Boba Fett actor was there. And then, of course, there were a whole bunch of people just from this area and from wherever that came in costumes, because people that get into Comic-Con get into Comic-Con and they go full garb. And you can tell they love it. And I'm like, great for them. A little weird for me, but I think it's really cool. They just enjoy it so much.
Yes, I'm 1,000% behind cosplay. Some people who like, you love the show and you want to dress up as the characters or like dress up as like the weird, alien thing.
Yeah.
And I think there are cultures like built around cosplay or around each of the fandoms around each of those things and how people like connect with and want to try to dress up as that is just awesome.
They had a great big blown up Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters, which is an awesome sci-fi movie in my opinion.
Classic.
Yes. We don't talk about like Ghostbusters 2. I didn't really like that one. But you know what? Ghostbusters Afterlife, I thought they did a really good job. The one that just came out like last year or whatever. It was really well done and I was pleasantly surprised. I wasn't sure if it would be good or not.
Okay, I was thinking about sci-fi movies recently, and there's this one that popped into my head. There's a story with it. So my friend, same age as me, remembers being a child and pretending like she was asleep under a blanket in the living room while her parents were watching this scary movie. And all she remembered was there was this kid who got snatched up off of the toilet at school and like pulled into this like vent.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, what is this movie? So of course I go to the internet and I try to find it, and it's called The Willies.
Okay.
It's got Sean Astin in it, which most people recognize as like Rudy or Samwise.
Yes.
Excuse me, Samwise from Lord of the Rings. And he and like some friends are like doing this little camp out in the backyard in their tent, and they're telling each other scary stories. And one of the scary stories is about like this creature at this school. And basically anybody who's like a bully or is mean to this one kid gets snatched up by this monster. My friend had a fear of school bathrooms after watching this movie.
Oh no.
But it's one of those that like definitely the costuming and like the shots are really cheesy. It's one of those like classic monster movies.
Yeah. So we watched Sharknado as a family.
The concept of Sharknado, I just think is hilarious.
Well, the whole movie is so ridiculous.
Absolutely.
I can't even believe it. And then they've made like 5 of them. It's definitely a B I don't know, C, D movie. I'm not sure, but it's funny because we don't obviously don't watch it for its cinematic value.
Right.
We watch it just to be entertained and laugh at the cheesiness of it. I hope nobody approaches it as wanting to watch it as a serious film. They might be a little disappointed.
Sharknado is not Jurassic Park.
No.
There's no there. I think they try to scientifically like explain how the sharks get like picked up by the cyclone or something, but like really, it's one of those like sci-fi in that like this is an improbable thing. The scary sci-fi classics. Have you ever watched Mystery Science Theater?
I've heard of it. I don't think I've ever seen an episode.
There's one specific one that I recall. I actually watched it recently on purpose because there's this classic, and I think it's in the public domain, sci-fi movie called Teenagers from Outer Space. And it's literally like these teenagers that are, I think they're trying to take over Earth or something. But it was on Mystery Science Theater. So the copy I ended up borrowing from our CleveNet library system was this. But it's one of those that, I definitely watch because I'm like, this is cheesy old science fiction. But there's so many like that are like the Blob from Outer Space and
the Swamp Thing.
Right.
Yeah. In your opinion, where do like the Marvel movies fall? Because they're like superhero movies, but there's a lot of science fiction, a lot of, science. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy especially.
Right. I would probably put like those superheroes as a subcategory in sci-fi because it's kind of an alternate reality, or it's like even set in ours. Part of what sci-fi means to me is like, here are science-y things that could happen. And obviously like we don't have people with superpowers, but like the how people get superpowers thing is definitely a science fiction. I mean, like Spider-Man gets bit by a radioactive spider, or like how the Hulk becomes the Hulk is a whole failed science experiment thing.
Right. And then Iron Man, of course, his is all technology, basically. And then like with the Spider-Mans, there's the alternate universes within the Spider-Mans too, which are, is it Spider-Mans or Spider-Man? I'm not sure. But yeah, I was never a huge superhero movie fan, but I went ahead and watched all the Spider-Man movies and I enjoyed them. I liked Andrew Garfield a lot, but Tom Holland, he's just so cute. He's
so fun.
Yeah. And so I really enjoyed all of his too. I didn't like the way it ended. Well, I think that we have discussed our science fiction books and movies, and I don't know, is there science fiction music? I mean, other than the scores that come with the
I was
movies?
about to be like, are you going to forget John Williams?
Well, no, I just meant I mean, there's not like if you turn on the radio, you're not going to hear like a science fiction song, generally speaking, right? I mean,
have you ever heard E.T. from Katy Perry?
I actually have not. I missed that one.
My first thought with sci-fi music was, are you familiar with theremin instruments?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. So a theremin, it kind of looks like an old-fashioned radio, and it has like what looks like an antenna. And based on like where you move your hands horizontally and vertically, it makes this like really ethereal music. I feel like that kind of sound is what you could almost get that sound from a synthesizer too, but it's different. You should look up theremins.
I will, definitely.
Yeah. It's THEREMIN.
Okay.
Yeah. So like there.
Oh.
MIN.
Okay.
Theremin. Yeah.
Okay.
So some upcoming events that we have in May. Children's has a few things going on. They've got their Mother's Day story time, which is on Monday the 8th, and they just started. So their second meeting of book club for 4th to 6th graders. It's called the Third Thursday Book Club, is on May 11th. I believe their book for May is The Lemonade Wars.
I think so.
Teens can sign up for book boxes. It starts on May 15th. And book club, of course, will be meeting on the 11th. They're reading The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. Have you read that yet?
No, I'm not sure if I'm going to. So I've been in a big slump. I have only read one book the whole month of April. Wow. I know. But anyhow, the good news for the staff of the library is that we will be closed on Monday, the 29th, for Memorial Day. Sorry for the community, but we will be open Tuesday morning. Excited to give you your materials and greet you with a smile.
Of course, you can go to the library website and check out our calendar to see all of the events that we have going on. Our seed exchange continues. We have our plant exchange on Saturday, May 6th. So you can bring, like, if you've got some extra flower bulbs or something and get to trade plants and talk to, I think we usually have a master gardener there as well. So.
And then in June, just to look forward ahead, we are going to be having our summer reading program kickoff, which I believe is June 3rd.
June 3rd, we're going to have
Yeah.
lots of fun things. I think they're going to get the street blocked off for us again. It's going to be
Yeah.
a big day
It is.
to start, summer and the summer reading program, which is always a blast.
Also, I want to remind everybody that we are still taking questions for Stump the Librarian. You can do a hashtag, I believe, on Instagram or Facebook, or you can just message us on either of those places. You can send us an email at the library, and if you have any questions that you think you could stump us on, which may or may not be a challenge, go ahead and give it a try. We'd love to try and be stumped, or at least find the answers to your burning questions.
I mean, it's my job to research things. I want to dare you guys, the listeners here, can you stump us? What kind of burning questions do you have about Orville, about the library,
Or pop culture.
or maybe about pop culture? We'll
Yeah.
see what we can find out.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us again for another episode of Beyond the Shelf, and we'll see you guys at the library.